Welcome back, guys. Today we have Mr. Isaac Funderburk again. Today we're going to be talking about communism, a couple things relating to Cuba. It's going to be a pretty interesting show. Get ready to rock and roll, guys. Here we go.
Hello, ladies and gents. Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful episode of the Tri-City's most riveting and informative show. Live from the hills of the Appalachians, the McMak Podcast, where your conservative libertarian hosts, Daniel McCrae and McMak, talk with you about some of today's most important issues and discuss how they affect you, the freedom-loving citizens of northeastern Tennessee. So, light your cigar, pour a glass of your favorite bourbon, kick up your feet, and get ready to dive right in. This is the McMak Podcast.
Hey guys, so we're back. Actually, what we're doing is we're talking about communism versus capitalism, philosophical ideas versus practical application. So that's actually what we really want to get in today. Isaac, tell me what you think.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously a very big question when looking at communism and capitalism. I was thinking about that on the way over here. Just what are my main overarching takeaways on the difference between communism and capitalism, and what the major problems with communism are, both on a practical level and on a philosophical level. So,
Okay.
I kind of identified three major problems. One has to deal with just the pure economics of the situation, one more with human nature, and one with the philosophical underpinnings. So
Okay.
we may get into that more, but just briefly going over all three. The first is just, I'm going in for a degree in economics. So I've done a little bit of research into this, that the practical problem with communism is that in any government, whether it's fascism or communism, they're centralizing economic power under a central authority. Whenever you have a very complex system, especially such an economy as the United States or Soviet Russia, but the same thing in smaller places like Cambodia or Cuba, where communism has also been tried, those economies simply can't sustain under a centralized power, because it takes the knowledge of individual actors using diversified means on a on a micro level. You have the banker down the street who knows the price of his supplies, who knows the insurance costs, his overhead, and so he knows exactly which price is bred out. The grain shortage in the several in another district does not affect the price of his a whole lot. He's able to respond accurately, versus if you have a central authority who has to control the automotive prices and the price of bread and the wages of these people over here, and the
It's a good analogy for that is the government.
right, yeah, exactly.
They suck at everything because they don't adapt. They can't adapt as quickly and blah blah blah.
Yeah, exactly. The government is the ultimate bureaucratic system that just simply doesn't have the knowledge and resources in order to manage such a complex system. So yeah, there's that. Then what a lot of people see in communism is the power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yes, that's what I was going to get
Right.
at when I was
Yes,
honestly,
exactly.
yeah.
And whenever you have a centralized power, like in any communist system, even if they're democratically elected, which theoretically could happen, whether it's dictatorship or democratically elected, you're still going to have power concentrated in the hands of relatively few people, and
With limited knowledge.
With limited knowledge, and power will corrupt, even if they're supposed to use that for good means. That is an inevitable part of human nature that will happen, and we've
Yes.
seen that evidence in every Marxist nation in the history of the world.
Right.
Since Karl Marx, that's always been the problem. It's always gone to the few at the top who misuse
Right.
that power and push another ideological thing. And then the final one, which is a bit more heady, is just going at it from a bit of a theological standpoint. I'm a Christian. I believe that the part of the fundamental nature of human beings is that we were put here on earth to be individual actors, to create things, to accomplish goals, and to be ambitious, and do that with other people and with God. And whenever you have the state come in and centralize all of the resources and all the talents from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, then it strips away that ability to fulfill ambitions, to do what you believe you're morally obligated to do. And instead, you're constantly referencing this higher earthly power to tell you what you should do with your life, how you should use your resources, rather than being able to go straight to God, or to fulfill what I believe is an essential part of human nature to accomplish your
Well,
dreams.
that's what we've talked about it before on the show. Is there's no incentive. That's what you said. You know, there's
Exactly.
no incentive to do well, because why would you do well? Because I mean, boy, you're gonna live in the same house. You're gonna drive the same car as whatever
Right.
you're given.
Right.
And there's no,
Yeah.
as humans need incentives.
Well, it's according on what your drive is actually based on. Is it based on fear that actually comes from the government stating that, hey, if you don't do this, this is what you're going to do. It doesn't matter
Right,
if you're
right.
if you're a pharmacist, you're going to be a farmer because
But
we
if your
need
fears,
food.
if your fears from the government and not God, though,
Right. That's what I'm saying. Well, that's what communism actually done. I mean, Marxist and Karl Marx himself said that religion is opium of the masses.
Yeah.
and
So
communism is amphetamine. That's Jordan Peterson.
yeah, that's it. I want to talk about the rise, or well, actually, I guess if you want to talk about the philosophical, what was number one? What was number one you want to
Number
talk
one
about?
was
And we'll get
just,
to my
just
stuff.
economically
Into economics and the moral
the problem of communism is that you just don't practically have the knowledge. A
Okay.
central power does not have the knowledge.
Right,
to
and
control
and that's the
economy.
thing. And what actually happened in Russia is you had nepotism and everything else, and you had to be a part of the political elite.
Exactly.
So what happened is you had let's say in a capitalistic society, you have people with ideas and stuff like that. Whoever has the best idea is the one who usually comes out on top. Well, in the Marxist society, it's each one according to his ability, according to his needs. It actually takes away, like you're saying, that incentive. So from
That's
an
why China sucks. That's
well,
why China can't invent anything. We've talked about that also. Is they don't have that. That's not part of
China
their
is
culture.
a weird fusion of
Of
communism and fascism.
right. Well, that and with some capitalistic aspects,
Right,
which is mainly fascism. Yeah.
Basically, what the point I'm making though is that that in China, if one of those people who's an engineer had a good idea, they might not speak up
Right.
because it will go against
Right.
someone who's higher up in the Communist Party that also works at whatever said facility, and that snuffs out any kind of new invention or
Right.
ingenuity.
Ingenuity, yeah.
So they have to steal it.
Right. Well, that and it's just
They're like, hey,
it
this
goes
is a good
it goes
idea,
back
steal
to it goes back to fear of the government.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And
we
lack-
turn
yeah.
we turn to the government to solve all of your problems. That's the communist utopia. You equalize the different classes, and now we're all happy. That solves all the problems in the world. Whereas from the capitalist perspective, no, going capitalism, be a lot of problems still left. But the government just makes it worse. And it's
Well-
up to individuals to solve those problems,
Right.
not to bring in the forceful hand of the government.
Yeah, when it comes to economics, I was listening to someone say, of course, capitalism has problems. Each one of these economic systems actually create disparity. Okay, but the difference between capitalism and communism, and the difference between capitalism and all of them, is actually capitalism creates profit, or they actually creates. That in itself, profit. It
It's
actually
a
creates
supply and
wealth.
demand,
Well,
yeah.
it actually creates wealth, and all the other economic systems just creating
create-
inequality.
Right.
Well,
you
it
know.
takes everything from everybody, and then it's redistributing it. So it can't.
Right.
So no, that's the capitalism is if something doesn't work, then it won't survive. That's life. That's survival of the fittest, and that's that's capitalism. So
And in
you
different
got
spheres,
communism.
it's the case in communism as well. In communism, if you have a leader that's not inspiring, that's not effective, then he will fail. And then
Right.
even if it's not an economic thing, just that fact is inherent in all of human society.
Yeah,
That
I mean,
less
any-
effective
yeah,
will fail.
anything. Yeah.
And that's why communism has failed. That's
Well,
why we don't have as many communist states in the world.
It's funny you mentioned that because if you look at people who like communism, they're all super risk averse, right? I think we've talked about that. Conservatives are typically have higher risk jobs and are typically willing to take risks because they think that they can handle whatever challenges
right.
arise. Whereas most people who are or into the whole government taking care of you thing, they're scared of change,
Right.
and they need someone to stop it.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. So, to I guess to end up, the economic portions, all of the economic ideas are, actually create disparities, the wealth income gap, but capitalism in itself actually creates wealth,
Right,
as other ones
right,
don't.
exactly.
So, number two was,
Number two was just the inevitability of power to corrupt. You have
Okay.
in the Soviet Union, you have Lenin became corrupt, and you have Stalin who violently took over after that, and ruled the Soviet Union with iron fist. You had Mao, you had Pol
Yeah.
Pot, you had Castro, which I think we'll talk about Cuba here in a little bit.
yeah.
But
Marx had the idea of the proletariat dictatorship.
right,
Right.
yes, exactly, and that's actually in pure Marxist theory. the end goal was to actually abolish the state, where the state
Right.
would no longer exist, and you
Right.
wouldn't even need to have a government, because in his
It would all be
by his
owned by
definition,
the-
yes,
yeah, they all
by
together.
definition for him, the government was whoever the ruling class is. For in feudalism, it was the aristocrats versus the serfs, and so by definition, that was the government. So if you equalize the classes, then the government would not exist. Which is an odd concept. It's never worked out in practicality, but that's
No.
what theoretical Marxism is.
Well, I mean, it's just, I mean, I think just on a primal level, I mean, we're all kind of, I don't want to say, I don't want to say animals,
Right.
but I
Well,
mean,
we have to have order. Yeah, I
Right.
don't think humans are innately
I
good
mean,
people.
well, I mean, it's just
Uh-huh.
how it is. I mean, it's been going on for thousands of years. I
Yeah.
mean, you always have,
Mm-hmm.
a ruling class or something like that, and it's just how civil society has
luckily-
actually been formed.
Luckily, though, there's been lots of experiments over the course of human history, and they created a thing called the United States, where they took the best parts of the things that had existed in the past and made it into something that
Right.
exists today.
But power corrupts and absolute power corrupts.
Yeah,
absolutely.
which is why it's amazing. The checks
Yeah.
and balances in the Constitution is amazing.
It's
You know,
the- and
it's
it's-
crazy.
and
And they
that's-
did it on
As long as we
purpose.
can keep them valid.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying, and that's why they actually created, the different,
The branches of
yeah,
government.
the different branches
yeah.
of government and stuff like that, so you
Checks and
could check
balances,
each
yeah.
other. Yeah. So I mean,
It's really hard for any of them to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Unless you declare emergency powers, then all fair and love and war.
we see
Right.
a lot of that in the states, yeah, unfortunately. But there's always enough bureaucracy, luckily, in the government that they haven't been able to really just
seems
screw
like
us all.
everything takes a long time to do. So
Yeah.
you can see it coming. Hopefully,
It also takes a long time to undo, too.
that's true.
So
that's true.
anyway, just this article right here, just talking about the brief for those of you who don't know anything about Marxism. Let's see.
Let me pause for a second. Are you guys seeing that?
Yeah, we can see
Yeah.
it.
Okay, I'm not seeing it on the master screen here.
Okay. Danny, you just go ahead and talk and fix that.
Okay. Did you stop recording?
No, don't stop recording.
All right.
No, we're
Another
good.
thing I was
We
going
just-
to mention, you were talking about inequality earlier. Let me get
Go ahead.
Mike.
ahead.
Inequality earlier with that's something that exists in all economic systems, and it doesn't exist. I was listening to Jordan Peterson a few weeks ago, and he mentioned this. It doesn't just exist in the economic systems. When you look at best-selling authors, you have everybody, and then you have like Stephen King and J.K. Rowling at the top, and they get vastly more sales than any other author.
Right.
Or if you get in politicians, you have most politicians, and then you have like the 5 hot federal, not hot as in sexually, but you have the trending top officials, Trump, Biden, and AOC, that everybody pays attention to. And so whenever you get in the top of any domain, you're going to have vastly more. There's going to be a vast
Only-
inequality between
Only in
the
a
rest
hierarchy,
of the people.
yeah. Only in an actual hierarchy of performance, of ability.
Right,
hierarchy of
even
ability.
in a capitalist society of ability, you're going to have the top people. Elon Musk, he outperforms. He's at the top of the hierarchy, and he makes vastly more than anybody else, and that's okay. The hierarchies don't just exist in economic systems; it exists in all areas of life,
Yeah,
of human
everything.
interaction.
Anywhere there's organization.
Right, exactly.
Anywhere there's organization, you'll have a hierarchy. That's just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
So where the rubber meets the road, when it comes to communism, is actually why we pulled up this article, and actually how it gets started. And so this article is from Britannica.com. It's called "A Revolution in Communism." Do you want to start reading, Miss Shannon?
Sure.
All right.
So, revolution and communism. So, Marx believed that capitalism is a volatile economic system that will suffer a series of ever worsening crises, recessions and depressions that will produce greater unemployment, lower wages, and increasing misery among the industrial proletariat.
All right, pause for a minute. That
Sure.
just that statement right there is wrong, because that's one of the things about Marxism, or Marxist hate, is objectivity. We had this conversation a long time ago. They don't want to be able to for me and you to sit here and say, well, hey, I got a raise this year. Hey, I got a different job. I made myself more marketable. I'm making more money this year. I'm actually doing well. They don't want to say that. And it just, that in itself goes against that thought right there. So go ahead, Shannon.
These crises will convince the proletariat that its interests as a class are implacably opposed to those of the ruling bourgeois. Armed with revolutionary class consciousness, the proletariat will seize the major means of production along with the institutions of state power, police, courts, prisons, and so on, and establish a socialist state that Marx called, quote, the revolutionary dictatorship of the proletariat. The proletariat will thus rule in its own class interest, as the bourgeoisie did before, in order to prevent a counter-revolution by the displaced bourgeoisie. Once this threat disappears, however, the need for the state will also disappear. Thus, the interim state will wither away and be replaced by a classless communist society.
Which they'll never let happen.
Right.
The people in power never let that happen.
And it couldn't
Right.
happen practically either way.
Right.
Marx's vision of communist society is remarkably and perhaps intentionally vague. Unlike earlier utopian socialists, whom Marx and Engels derided as unscientific and impractical, including Henri de Saint-Simon, Charles Fourier, and Robert Owen, Marx did not produce detailed blueprints for a future society.
Okay, hold on one second. So that tells me right there, he's not thinking ahead. It's just like Jordan Peterson, one of the things he was talking about earlier in a video where we were talking about, he's not a critical thinker. You know, he doesn't plan ahead. You know, he's not sitting there thinking, well, this is what I'm going to do. How's this going to
No,
affect
it's just like setting things on fire.
Right, right. So it almost to me, you know, just from reading this, you know, he's like, well, you know, he was an intelligent person, but it's almost like he let his ego, which is what he talks about, you know, with the capitalists and everything else. It's like he's like, well, I just want to be in power, okay? And this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to get the oppressed and the oppressor, and I'm going to set them against each other, and I'm going to sit back here as a third party, and I'm going to let these two go at it, and then I'm going to move in when it all crumbles down, and I'm going to take control, which is pretty much what his idea was. Which is pretty much kind of what happens in most communists.
Well, that's what happens. Yeah,
Communistic
it only happens in places where things are bad enough for a revolution to take place. It's not even close to that bad in the United States. So people who think that it's even close, it's not.
Okay.
But so to create that class division, things have to be very bad. Things have to be bad enough that where people
Or people have to think they are.
Or the
or
perception has to be there. Perception is reality.
But what I'm saying is people have to be willing to give everything up that they have currently, which they're not. Because people, whenever they think about it, they actually will realize, oh, actually,
Things aren't that bad.
yeah. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
actually
they might
have a house to live
they might
in.
set a
I
couple
have a
cars
car.
on fire and stuff first. But I mean, yeah, there's enough that people have, luckily, that they're not willing to give it up, which is why everyone, you know,
Okay.
doesn't
Well,
break the law for the most part.
Go ahead,
I mean,
Shannon.
that's like kind of the frightening nature of the education system
Exactly.
in the United States currently.
Yeah.
And frankly, we don't have any society that went from being capitalist to communist. It's all going from feudalist or colonizationalist, I don't know, from that to communism.
Because yeah, it was already the serfdom. You know, you mentioned earlier.
Right.
You have to have it really like those serfs had nothing.
Right.
They didn't have.
Well-
they didn't have anything. They didn't own anything.
Right. We'll get to that. There's actually something that's called enclosure acts that actually, you know, from feudalism in Europe when it actually went, and you know that's what actually caused, well, not communism in itself. We'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, so let's get back to this. Where we at, sister?
Some features that Marx did describe, such as public education and a graduated income tax, are now commonplace.
Right.
Other features such as public ownership of the major means of production and distribution of goods and services according to the principle from each
Right.
according to his ability to each according to his needs remain as radical as they were in Marx's time. But for the most part, Marx believed that the institutions of a future communist society should be designed and decided democratically by the people living in it. It was not his task, he said, to write recipes for the kitchens of the future. Yet, though Marx was reluctant to write such recipes, many of his followers were not. Among them was his friend and co-author Friedrich
Okay.
Engels.
So let's think about this. So he wanted to create a utopia. Do you know what the Greek word for utopia, what it actually comes from? You know what it means?
I don't know.
Nowhere. It means nowhere. I'm taking you. I'm actually going to take you to nowhere. Okay, because the place doesn't exist. It can't. I mean,
I wonder what dystopia is then. I don't know. I'll look it up.
yeah. Look it up.
Somewhere.
But
Yeah.
yeah. So so what you got is Marx actually. There's a couple ideas that he actually thought about. And it says that capitalism actually creates internal conflicts which lead to revolution because they're already built into the system.
It's called
And-
competition, basically.
Right,
yeah.
right. That's it. It's a competition, and it's actually I guess, the disparity between incomes. Because you have the people who are smarter people. God gives people gifts, and these are the people who are smart, and they educate themselves, and they go get educated, and they actually create businesses and stuff like that. And you have other people that just aren't motivated.
Or don't have the capacity.
Right. That's true. So
And that's where, in a free society, you can choose. If you don't want to work 80-hour work week and not make that, then that's fine.
Well, it's funny. It's funny that you say that, because it actually, when it gets down to the Enclosure Acts, yeah, it's cool that you actually brought that up. See, one of the things that Marx said about capitalism is capitalists want more capital. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And but capitalism is the only system in which it really, I guess, accommodates for a person with less means. If you work hard, you can get to an elevated situation.
It's the hierarchy.
Right.
It's the skill-based hierarchy. I mean, if you
Right.
have something that people want, they'll pay you for it. If you have something that no one else has, they'll pay you as much as you want for it.
Right.
And that's your skills, your everything. That's incentive-based. And if you don't have that, then there's nothing pushing you to the top or pulling you to the top, So-
Yeah, and one of the things you were talking about earlier is like, the serfdoms and stuff like that. It's like, it's a feudalistic system. When they actually switched to capitalism, they had what was called Enclosure Acts in Europe. And what that actually meant is, like, people could actually buy or get plots of land. So, the serfs didn't have any money, so they couldn't get any land. So the people who were on the land or were rich already, they could, I guess,
Just stay that way.
Right.
yeah, it wasn't owned by the state anymore, so to say. So you had private property, so to speak. So what happened was, you had the Industrial Revolution, so people actually move off the farms and they go into the cities and actually get jobs, which is kind of capitalistic,
Right.
in a sense.
It's supply and demand, yeah.
Right. So, and they actually go and they actually have a better life. There was a gentleman named Adam Smith wrote a book called Capitalism, and what he said why it works is because you actually have divisions of labor. Say for instance, you had a guy who makes a clock, right? And he actually used this example. Guy makes a clock, right? And then he's like, man, it takes me 6 hours to make this clock. He's like, well, it's a bunch of cogs and stuff like that. Well, what if I taught a person to make cogs? Okay. And then I let them work for me, and all they do is make cogs.
That's the assembly line.
Right. So, it's divisions of labor, specialization,
Ford, yeah.
job. Yeah. So, so it's more efficient to produce more, which actually leads to profit.
Specialization.
Yeah. So, but Marx says that profit is actually theft, because he said, it's what's kind of ironic, because he actually complained that Europe, the capitalistic societies, actually had so much more than what they actually needed. So he was complaining about that, and which kind of goes back to courting each one's belly, courting each one's need. He's like, well, why do you want? That's just a waste.
Well, the thing is, though, is if you don't have those massive...
That was his thought.
Yeah, right. If he had thought about it longer, the thing is the only places in history or culture, civilization, where you have massive breakthroughs or anything like that, massive, progression, is when you have super concentrated amounts of profit in one place.
Yeah.
A lot of resources. You
Yeah.
can have you can have that genius who you can now endow him with enough resources to go do his crazy idea and actually revolutionize.
Yeah, because they have to
whatever
be
it
able to blow all your
Right.
money. They have to be able to blow it.
Yeah.
But yeah, whenever you have
is.
the
Mozart
government-
had to have a sponsor.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's funny because you actually said this earlier. It says Marx says capitalism alienates workers from purpose, and what he's saying is, okay, man, I got this job. I don't like my job, but I got to eat, so I go work. So I go work at this job that I don't like because I got to eat and I got to have clothes and stuff like that. And he says, it keeps you from actually becoming or reaching your full potential. Capitalism actually keeps most people from reaching their full potential. Well, I mean, it's just like you said a while ago. It's like, well, I mean, if you don't like the job, you don't have to work it.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? You can actually, now, but granted, you may have to do like I did. I mean, I knew that I could actually do better, but I actually worked and I went to college at the same time. So, I mean, I had to work because I had to eat and I had to live.
Yeah, and you don't want to be leeching off someone else's money to do that. You don't have to be forcing
In
someone else
utopia,
to.
you
I
don't
would
have to
argue
work.
it's could be the opposite. I mean, I would think communism would be more apt to keep a person from being all they can be.
Well, I think where
'cause there's nothing to strive
Well,
if you think about it this way, if you have a communist box that everyone's drawn into, then it's very easy to fill that box all the way because your box doesn't go out anywhere. It doesn't expand at all.
Yeah.
It's just right there. In real life, we're always progressing. Your box is always expanding. It's a amorphous line. Like an
Economics is
amoeba.
not a pie.
Yeah.
Pie theory is wrong. There's an unlimited amount of resources if we're able to utilize them.
You just
And,
if
well,
you can
in
get
a
'em.
capitalist society, there's choice.
Or the illusion of choice.
Or individual choice. You don't have to be the
Individual,
clock
right.
maker.
You can eat or
If-
you don't have to eat.
That's why it's so funny to me whenever people who are on the left, they all have like purple hair or something, and I tell people it's like, that's a conservative value because that's an individualism. That's an individualist choice. If they had any sense about them, they'd realize that towing the party lines on the left is going to get them banned from doing anything that might offend anybody, which might be their purple hair or holding hands with the same sex in the long run. They don't see it because they're very far or nearsighted. But
Well, Marx says that capitalism exploits the low-skilled worker because the capitalist thinks that the low-skilled worker are expendable. Well, the thing about it is, in any job, I mean,
of course, no communist societies have ever treated workers as expendable.
Right,
I mean,
right.
that's never happened.
yeah. And
Definitely don't
but the
kill
thing
people.
about it is, in a capitalistic society, you can make yourself more marketable. You can go to college, you can learn a trade, you can, take get a journeyman certificate or something like that, and get to the point to where, like I'm saying, capitalism actually makes ways, gives people paths to better themselves, and communism is a controlled economy.
and it's about who. I mean, people don't realize it. I mean, it's just like anything bureaucratic. It's who you know. You can climb the ladder of communism, but it's about who you know.
But if your
whose
uncle is
backs
rich,
scratch.
you don't have a chance.
Yeah.
Well, you're not part of the bourgeoisie.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
that's the top of the communists are all rich though.
In a communist system, does that mean like the entry level position, it would be
Given to you.
well, an entry level position, let's say like a job flipping burgers at McDonald's,
It wouldn't be McDonald's.
would carry the same weight as like being a brain surgeon.
In Cuba, that's how it is, where
Theoretically.
everyone
I
makes the
mean-
same money. Where I
Yeah,
saw a
well-
guy who was a taxi driver. He was saying that we make way more than doctors because they can take tips,
Well,
which is technically
but
illegal.
just like it said up in there, it says that you have a graduated tax system. Okay. Now,
Yeah,
what does that mean?
Yeah.
You have different levels of taxation. Well, are you going to tax people that make more?
So they're going to get the same. Supposedly, they would be leveling it would be just right here, even though you're making more
Well, I
money.
mean, that goes to answer your question. Is what I'm getting at, Shannon. You know what I'm saying. You would still have different levels of people in society, but what happened is you had nepotism, or you gave the job of computer engineer to your cousin who was an auto mechanic.
Right.
Yeah.
You gave him that job, and then all of a sudden,
defense
yeah,
analogy.
you're like, oh man, he's like, well, I can get to work, but I can't work on these
Like,
computers.
man, bro, I can get you a job as a brain surgeon.
Yeah, you got a
bro.
car I can work on? I'm good to go. But I mean, that's and of course I'm simplifying it.
Right.
But I mean,
Not very though.
well, I mean,
I
but
mean, it's true.
Principle's the same, but the
Yeah.
application's more simple. Yeah.
I mean, if they're
right.
trying to go around saying there's not enough black people in this job, we're just going to give them a job without any competition, then that's obnoxious, and that's it would immediately get to what you're talking about. It's not even that's what I'm saying. It's not even that far fetched. It's not even oversimplified.
yeah. Well,
You have to be good at things to
So-
progress. I mean,
here's something that's interesting. Is Marx called the unemployment rate a freedom rate? He called it a freedom rate because in the end, now granted, to combat what I said earlier about him not actually forward thinking, if you get to a utopia Everything's supposed to work synergistically, and you're not supposed to have, no classes, no government. Everything's
Right.
supposed to work, but that's just not. He just didn't take into account for human nature. He didn't take in account the alpha male or the beta male or anything, psychological. He didn't take any account for psychology at all.
Right.
He was just looking at how bad it was, right, for serfs in
Well-
Russia, or I mean in Germany. So, but I mean he was just looking at it. He's like, yeah, this will start a revolution if people. Because he was just analyzing why it could happen. What makes a revolution happen?
And honestly, a lot of his critiques were legitimate, but his answers
Yeah.
were even worse.
Can
Yeah,
the
it
alpha
did.
male exist in a communist society? I mean,
Stalin.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah,
You have to be at the top, though.
well,
Yeah.
The very top is the
there's
best.
a great example.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always going to exist. I mean, it's always going to.
You got President Xi. He's an alpha male for sure.
Yeah,
But the thing is, yeah, it's like as long as you don't piss off the party, then you can climb the ranks. As
Yeah, I
long
mean,
as you
that's
do
like having
whatever
a
for.
queen bee,
Right.
of a hive. How many alpha males can exist in a
Well, yeah,
communist
that's the thing is
society?
that's why you don't piss Xi off and you don't piss Putin off
Or Kim Jong Un.
or Kim Jong Un. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I
Well,
mean, who wants to go to his country anyway?
To expand on that freedom rate
Or
deal
Hillary Clinton's.
would actually
Or
go
Hillary Clinton.
talking about the freedom rate. We were talking about this earlier, though. Capitalism actually makes, profit. You produce more than actually what you need. So he thought, why does everybody need to work? So that's why he called it the actual freedom
I
rate.
guess you don't if if all you're trying to produce
And
is
in
food.
capitalism, you don't have to. If you're satisfied with what you have, you don't have to work. It's fine.
What-
It annoys me when people say that capitalism is just a machine for making a lot of stuff cheap. If you want, capitalism does whatever
great
the people
byproduct.
want
Right.
to do. Period.
It's
If everyone
voting.
wants to make their own clocks and be at home, be satisfied with that, then you're absolutely able to do that.
I would say it's a reactionary system to needs. You know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
exactly.
It's more of a
It reacts to the
reactionary.
to the demands.
Yeah, it's a
the
reaction
easiest-
to
it's the
demands.
most efficient,
Right. Whereas communism is, I'll tell you what you need.
Exactly. It's a top-down system.
which is why
Right.
Not
people
one that-
starved to
yes.
death in Ukraine. Is like
Because the
well,
leaders didn't care whether they starved to death. in
Right.
Ukraine.
Well,
That
I
wasn't a
mean,
big deal.
what happened was they, all them farmers down there didn't want to give up their property because they didn't have private property anymore. They were fighting back. So they were like, okay, well, we're going to kill you, or we're going to send you off to the gulag. Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have farmers now. There's a story
exactly.
that goes on. I've talked about this before. I talked.
but they
to
burned
Nanny
the
about
food
it.
too, like the extra food because there's not supposed to be any extra. They just destroyed it.
Well, I mean,
They didn't give it to the people who were starving.
whoever controls the food controls the people.
Well, yeah,
Well,
but
that's
I'm
why.
saying
That's another
I'm-
reason why
yeah.
they did it. Well, I mean, so. But I've always told there's a story that comes out of Russia, and whenever the revolution happened and they actually got rid of all the farmers, you had a pharmacist. A pharmacist. They went to him like, "Oh, you're not a pharmacist anymore. We whacked all our farmers. You got to go down here and you got to start growing food." And of course, they didn't know how. So I mean, that actually, they just kept on making bad decisions over and over and over.
Yeah, and in Stalinist Russia, the whole Marxism Leninism is the philosophy there. It's about urbanization. It's about industrializing. So they actually pulled a lot of people in from the countryside to do that, and that's the largest reason why it starved, was because they were trying to
Right.
industrialize so quickly.
Well, it's
and
all
it did
forceful.
kind of work, but it also had catastrophic consequences.
Capitalism is like
Right,
water.
exactly.
Yeah.
Bruce Lee. Capitalism is like water. It fills whatever shape that it needs to at the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whereas communism is like, no, you're,
Ice.
yeah.
Yeah. So Jordan Peterson actually did. He talked about this. He actually debated a gentleman named Isaac.
Listened to part of that, not the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
thing.
very, very interesting, and he had some pretty good ideas, and it's kind of like along the same lines of what we were talking about. But he said, and this is something that I do all the time, but I didn't actually think about it. So I guess I may be not a critical thinker. But so what he said, what Marx did, he said he didn't have the fundamental idea that all ideas are wrong. You got to, once you have an idea, you need to sit back and look at that idea and try to attack it from all ends. And if it still actually treads water, then it should be a good idea.
Yeah, it's a reasoning philosophy
Yeah.
exercise, yeah.
Right. So that's one of the things that I just do. I just do naturally.
Well, you
But-
should if you're
Right.
an intelligent person.
Right. Well,
That's the problem is a lot of people don't do that.
Right. And so another thing Marx actually talked about all the time, and it's actually a genius, is you got the oppressed and the oppressor. So when you identify just two groups, You know, it's just like the binary system that we have in a political system. It's just like Carol Quigley.
The good guys and the bad guys.
Right, right, and that's what
It's vague
happens.
which one's which.
Well, I mean that's the thing. If you have someone that's actually, or a system or a group that actually just points all the time and says, "This is the bad guy. This is the bad guy. This is the bad guy," you know, that's what happens.
It's affirmations, yeah.
Right.
And if they silence everyone else, you
Right.
know, even if the 90%, if it's only 90%, it's the same thing in China. I mean, that's why 80% of people in China don't know the stuff that's going on in China, is because the media is controlled, right? And then they're just told. I mean, it's propaganda.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just when it's easier to control people that way. You know, it's just like Carol Quigley, which was, I think we talked about this before, was Bill Clinton's mentor. And, you know, Bill Clinton was always, you know, said he was the middle of the road guy. You know,
He's a moderate.
right, he's moderate.
He's more moderate than
Well, I
what we
mean,
got now.
yeah, well, Carol Quigley said, hey, you know, what you need to do is you only need to have two choices because they're easier to control. He said, what you need to do is you need to have people bickering about small things, but when it comes to the main agenda, they all vote the same way, which is pretty much what happens. You know, when you see it, just take a look at our, you know, $40 trillion, or we're in debt. You know,
But it's funny though, because
Only thing Democrats and Republicans can agree on is spending
Spending
money.
money, yes.
yeah, well,
Right.
yeah, of course. It's funny though that you're talking about that, is because now more than ever there is a bigger divide amongst the little things and the
Right.
big things.
well, you see, but here's the thing. Let's go one
There's a
step.
hard edge now, and whereas it used to be a soft edge.
Right. Well, let's divide them even more. Okay. Let's say you add more
race.
variables.
Yeah.
Well, let's say you add more variables to the situation. You can actually manipulate that system to where someone is always the oppressor, and the other group is always oppressed. So you can always have
You
them.
just look at people who's at the top of a hierarchy, because we were talking about Jordan Peterson. That's always the hierarchy that people are attacking. The top of the hierarchy is all white people.
Oh, in Germany, all the Jews are rich bankers. We should kill the Jews.
Yeah, well, yeah,
or,
exactly.
or the bourgeoisie are controlling all the money. We should down with the bourgeoisie. Or in the French Revolution, you had the aristocrats. It's happened in every society, like every dictatorial society that's
Yeah.
collapsed.
And you know, you got to find a happy median. You
Well,
know,
yeah, it's doing things you get incentive
Well,
for
I mean,
doing
the,
the right
the
thing.
happy median in the hierarchical society of control and civilization, I think the median is capitalism. It gives everybody. I'm not talking
A shot.
I'm not talking about crony capitalism.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think that it's the smartest way to think about it.
I think you're right, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it on a simpler level, you know, you sit there, you want to keep people from revolting, so you have to give them a means to excel. You know, so you have to give them a way, or at least give them the illusion of excelling. So, I mean, I think capitalism.
I think that's part of what video games are on a slight tangent. Video games are a very easy way to accomplish things, especially for guys who love to hit things and to have those little badges to get the goals.
And it
it's a
takes
very easy way to do that on the side.
It doesn't take any actual.
Right,
You
exactly.
don't learn any actual skills, and you don't actually get any actual benefits in real life.
But you just defeated a dragon.
Yeah.
So
It's pacification.
Yeah, that's the reason. Like, people forgot. You realize the Democrats were trying to pass a bill to legalize marijuana in the dead of the COVID lockdown. It's like, dude, why is that on your agenda? Because they want everyone to be stupid and not paying attention to what's going on.
Well,
Well,
I mean,
they also want to be popular. I mean, that's
Popular amongst half of the people, but it's like,
It's probably more than half.
I think a lot of people would agree with decriminalizing it, but I don't think a lot of people would agree that it's a good thing to legalize marijuana. Like, it's not a good thing for people physically,
Right,
unless you have a want condition that you
Right.
need it for. It's not going to do anything good. It's like, hey, do you think it's good for you to go get drunk? No, but people want to do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's something that was one of their key issues. They tried to pass it, but without a quorum, though. That's whenever Massey was like, hey, what are you guys doing?
right.
I want a quorum here, and then they freaked out, and even Trump, berated him initially, but
I mean, I'm in favor of legalizing marijuana, but that's not exactly the time to do it.
yeah,
the
it's
very-
like in the
yeah,
middle
the
of
Well,
very
that's
everything.
the reason why they did it, is because I guarantee you they were actually trying to push some monetary issue. You know, so I mean, you know, that's the thing. Well, that's how they do. That's what they do a lot of times. Is, you know, they'll do reconciliation, and then, you know, they'll
Fix it the way
push,
they want.
Yeah, they'll push a bill through. You know, that
So
way.
many omnibus bills out there.
Yeah. and it's crazy.
We need to get rid of all the all the government entities, and they need to go back to the way it was. They need to do it one at a time.
So let's talk about our economic system here. We were talking about this earlier, Isaac. I think we have a mixed system, which actually works fairly well. It can be tweaked out. I mean, I understand that, but
very much like the Roman society, where except for we have a lesser to the extent of government control, but still you have the government, which is the communist side, and then you also have very rich people that have businesses and markets.
Right. So
you got Marcus Crassus versus Julius Caesar.
Right.
One's a businessman, one's executive.
Right. And so from that aspect, but what they do in our system, that's what people kind of trips me out about everything is they always talk about fascism, which is exactly what we have now
on the left.
On the left, and people don't realize it. When in a fascistic system, what happens is you have corporations and government working together, and synergistically for the outcome. And 9 times out of 10, it's for that political party to stay in power. If you've got, you've got people in government now saying, well, telling like Twitter, like, hey, you should censor speech, or we're actually, going around flagging post.
Just the one side. It's really actually hard. If you go online and try to find the definition of fascism, it's very difficult to find an accurate, in-depth, detailed description, because they don't want people to realize, hey, well, wait. They're trying with the definitions you'll find, will try to associate it with
ultra-right
Nazi.
nationalists. Ultra-right nationalists.
So, but if you look at if you look at Nazis, the Nationalist Party in Nazi Germany, they are. The definition of fascism is just persecuting the other party.
When it comes down to it, the most everything revolves around money. Okay, everything revolves around
whatever they want.
The saying is, it's the economy, stupid. Every election, it's the economy, stupid. Well, what did Mayor de Rothschild say? Give me control of a country's money, and I care not who makes the laws.
Right.
So, so what it all revolves around is the economy. So if you got a political party that's actually involved with these huge players in the economy, it's fascism. It's fascism, and that's what's going on.
But again, it's socialism, but also attacking one party. It's that's why conservatives get shut down everywhere. It's all those forces that you're talking about attacking one of the parties for no reason really, other than they just don't like them, and then they make you evil. That's fascism. That's what they did against all the other parties. Hitler was like, I didn't just destroy communism, I destroyed every other party too. He alienated everyone else, and that's fascism. You go beat those people up, you make that okay.
When you look at like the political compass of I don't know if y'all seen that, you have the libertarians on the bottom, authoritarians on the top. You have the left and the right. So you have the libertarian right, libertarian left, authoritarian right, and authoritarian left. So historically, the Democrats have been kind of just really on the central left, but they've been increasingly moving up across the communist sector up to just authoritarian. I think because theoretically the left is supposed to be socially liberal, socially you can do whatever you want, but fiscally we're going to be controlled. And so theoretically, that's what communism is supposed to do as well, is that socially you have liberties, but we control the economy. But they're doing both now. They're controlling the social aspects of it and the monetary aspects of it. So they're ideologically they're communist as well as fascist, which theoretically puts them down like central totalitarianism.
They can't even recognize. They don't even see it. That's what I was just talking about. The hair thing. They don't even know.
The ones that are in control.
Oh, the ones in control do. But I'm saying the people who are voting for them don't. They don't know.
Well, I mean,
they're just ignorant. That's why it's a paradigm shift they're not willing to do.
Well, what happened? I mean, listen, man, I'm telling you, man. These people on the left are intelligent.
Tell me, Daniel. Tell me, Daniel.
No, these people on the left are super intelligent, man. What they're doing is, we were talking about this death by 1,000 cuts, man. They are
You're
pushing.
not talking about the voters. You're talking about like the.
No.
Yeah, you're talking about the people in power.
Well, no. Well, I mean, the people.
People are more intelligent than a lot of media give them credit for.
Yeah, and that's why they're using the Alinsky tactics.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things I was going to get to. Saul Alinsky said, always blame your opponent for what you're doing. But what they're doing is they're moving the Overton window over to the left very, very slowly. We were talking about this a while ago. Okay,
normalizing everything.
So let's think about socialism for a minute. Okay, let's think about Andrew Yang. He wants UBI. He wants universal basic income. What's going on right now? What's the problem?
Tax.
Okay, yeah, but what's going on right now? Okay, so they're
Everything
getting
the federal government is like
well,
the majority of the federal government is about supporting is about from each according to his ability to each according to his needs, about cropping off the top and trying to fill in the bottom, from everything from public education to welfare, like you were saying, to
right,
welfare to free
right,
free transportation.
right,
Just all of these things are about taxing everyone and providing
right.
with those who need it the most.
Okay, so but who's to say who needs what?
Exactly.
Right, that's the thing. That's the central government. But anyway, back to UBI. So we get extra $300 a week coming from the federal government. That's UBI's $1,200. Andrew Yang only wants to give $1,000, so we're technically giving more than what Andrew Yang wanted to do. And all I see around here everywhere is signs saying, hiring, hiring. I need workers.
Well, supply and demand.
Well,
You know,
I
if you're not
understand
paying
that.
as much, if
So,
you're not paying them as much,
so
they're not
let's
gonna
take
go.
let's take it one step further. Okay, let's say I get a job at McDonald's, right? Well, that's what I do. I'm just a low skilled labor worker, which is fine. But okay, so you sit there. It's quite intelligent, and if you're a low skilled labor worker, listen to what I'm saying. So what you do is you hold out. You go. I would go to the McDonald's and say, well, I'm getting so much right now. You give me $20 an hour. I'll come to work.
They'll be like, no, we'll just increase the price of burgers.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. People aren't looking down
That's
the
capitalism,
road.
though.
Well, it is, but people aren't looking down the road. No, what happens is actually it'll turn into communism or socialism, just for the simple fact of the matter. McDonald's is not going to be able to be open if a cheeseburger costs $25,
Right.
because I'm not going to buy one.
And people think that the CEO is going to get paid less, and that'll be the big game
Yeah.
changer. That's the goal for them. Is that if we raise the wages of poor workers, then the CEO is not going to take $10 million a year anymore, and that's not going to happen.
There's some guy, I forgot what company he started. He's super annoying. I see him on LinkedIn all the time. He did a good thing. He's like, no one in my country or my company makes less than $100,000 a year or something like that. He's like, I could do that, and I still might have a huge amount of money. He's like, dude, that business model might fit for your company. If you paying everyone at McDonald's $100,000,
and if you do, then great.
That's great.
Then you're going to get all the best workers in the place.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Well, I mean,
Exactly.
I
You're
don't
gonna
think
get the best workers.
Yeah, sorry to
Go
interrupt,
ahead.
but I
Go
just
ahead.
don't. The McDonald's job, I mean, it's an entry level job that was
Right.
never meant to sustain a family.
Or
yeah.
if you do, you can work your way up, and they don't though. Most people don't.
But
they're
whose
not.
choice is that?
Yeah, it's
I
theirs.
mean,
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean but that's capitalism. It's just like what you're saying, But most people don't know that the profit margin at these, companies, it's really not all that large.
It's about volume.
Yeah, it's about
Yeah.
volume.
And it's
A double
nothing-
cheeseburger at Burger King is like $3.
Yeah, they make
Yeah.
a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but it's a numbers game, and it's like
Right.
it's all factored in. Yeah, if you
It's kind
start
of like the
messing it up.
long game, if you want to look at it
Yeah.
like that, as an analogy. Like, okay, well, I can sell, this cheeseburger, and I'll make 2%. But if I sell 3 million of them, you know what I'm saying?
That's the same thing with life. We can go back to Jordan Peterson, but I bounce back to him all day. But it's you're investing now. You're investing. You have to sacrifice something for something. That's life. You sacrifice your time now for something in the
No
future.
such thing as a free lunch.
Yeah,
Right.
and if you're making deals with yourself. He used a reference to The Simpsons. He's like, Bart had just eaten a whole tub of mayonnaise, and his Marge is like, you really shouldn't do that. That's really unhealthy for you, or you're gonna regret that later. And he's like, oh, that's a problem for future Bart. He's like, I would really hate to be that guy.
Right.
Yeah.
And well, so let's think about it. Let's take it on down the road.
It's responsibility to, if we're still talking about communism, it's People don't want any responsibility. That's what we're seeing. People want the government to take care of
That's the
them.
freedom rate.
Yeah.
That's the freedom rate.
And then if you go back to Jordan Peterson, as much responsibility as you can possibly take is the only way to straighten yourself out, basically.
Well, I
That's
was
the
going to
best way
say,
to live.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to say that, and plus, I think it's the only way to actually improve yourself.
Yeah, it is.
You got to challenge yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't do everything poorly, but yeah, you should have enough responsibility to where you're making your own decisions, and if you make bad decisions, you're going to fall, and that's capitalism, and
Right.
that's the left where they're risk averse. Again, they don't want to even have the idea in their head that they could fail. As long
Well,
as the
I
government
mean-
takes care of it for them, they're never going to fail, which is why we see the bureaucracy sucks.
I understand, but I mean, right now, for the most part, I think, the conservatives in this area were just now starting to
It's waking up.
organize. Yeah. So,
They're like,
I mean-
oh wait, it's not just going to go away on its own.
right. And well, if enough people enough conservatives get together. I mean, we can organize, we can get things done. It's just like, there was a petition,
Right.
at 10 stands. You want to tell us about that?
Which one?
The one regarding the vaccines for ballot.
Yes, I haven't actually been involved in that one very much, but there recently been Ballot Health in the Northeast Tennessee area has been pushing vaccine badges for vaccinated, unvaccinated, different things. Like if you're vaccinated, you don't have to go through the health protocol when you come in. If you're vaccinated, then you can talk in groups without your masks on. But if someone who's not been vaccinated comes up, everybody has to mask up. And so that
stigmatizing those people.
And so that's demonizing the people who are not vaccinated.
Right.
And so I actually don't know the specifics of what the petition's about,
Right.
but it's basically to collect signatures to combat that policy
Right.
of segregating people based on their medical status, which you could theoretically say is a communist in basis as well, as segregating people based on this identity.
Exactly. But enough of us, got together, and I got a text message. Did you guys get that text message earlier? I'm not going to talk about the outcome totally just yet, but it has gotten the attention of Mr. Levine, and
Well,
yeah.
oh,
So
well. I mean, he's not going to do anything.
well, I mean, that's true, but it just goes to show. I mean, usually conservatives,
Squeaky wheels get the
right.
grease.
we get that, and we get off the bench late.
Do
You
you,
know.
We haven't had to do anything for a long time.
Right.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Daniel, do you have any idea, like percentage-wise, like what the
Tennessee's
sorry,
less
like-
than 50%.
yeah as
Yeah,
as far as the ballot healthcare workers go, like
As how many of them are vaccinated?
yeah, the percentages that are vaccinated, the percentages that
It's probably pretty high, honestly, considering that they have to wear a different color badge if they've not been vaccinated, and then also whenever they're anywhere where anyone else has not been
I think
vaccinated. or has
think
been
that's the idea.
Yeah, they're stigmatizing those people.
Right.
It's the stick.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's just I don't like it because of the stigmatizing.
I don't
Or,
like forcing someone to do something they don't want to
wanna
do.
Yeah. And
It's not making them work because they have to eat. It's making you get a shot into your body that may or may not benefit you. That's the problem. It's not
I
like
don't-
this is a clear 100% benefit. This is going to make you superhuman. If it was like that, then yeah, everyone would probably want it.
right.
well,
But even if
yeah,
everyone
I don't like the fact that
didn't,
it's,
even if we had the superhuman thing, then you still shouldn't force people to take it.
You should
Right,
enforce
right,
it, yeah, but
yeah.
people would want to.
I don't
Right.
like the fact that it's not FDA approved and that there are proven therapeutics.
Well, not according
Well,
to the government.
not
Well,
according
because
to
it could
the
not be
Emergency
pushed through
Authorization
under
Act.
emergency
Yeah.
authorization if they acknowledge.
Yeah, it would get rid of all their vaccines that are emergency use.
Well, hey man, there's a lot of pharmaceutical companies looking to make some money, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw George Soros and Bill Gates buy out
Yep.
a COVID testing company,
Yeah.
try to make some money.
And I'll tell you the news about the percentages of vaccinated individuals being hospitalized and
It
dying
keeps going up.
in other countries is like the complete opposite of what the MSM is pushing in the United States. It's like
And
60% in Israel.
I tell people that I see that I've been seeing clinical is I'm not going to tell you not to get the vaccine. I'm not going to tell you that there's no benefit because there obviously is in general, but there are also risks that they're not telling people.
Right.
And I saw someone today that what happens is a lot of these people that I was seeing that they'll have some underlying health condition like autoimmune something or something that has to do with your immune system. For example, I have a friend who he had warts whenever he was like 18 or 19, like on his knees or something, and they're gone, right? So your body suppresses the virus. He got the second shot, and then lo and behold, his warts came back all on his knees, within a period of a month or two, just for no reason. And same thing happened with this person that I saw. They had a rash. It looked like rheumatic rash. She had some kind of history of rheumatism back when she was a kid, and now all of our joints are hurting and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened at the exact same time. You know, she didn't line it up with the vaccination time,
Yeah.
which is what people are not doing, because you know it takes a little bit of time for your body to show these symptoms, and then you have people who are having these neurologic disorders. It's all autoimmune. I'm not telling people they shouldn't get a vaccine. There's obvious
Talk to your
benefits.
doctor.
So-
Yes.
Well,
Talk
a
to
lot
your
of
Make a
doctors
decision for yourself.
And
Yeah.
they'll never be able to, like, I mean, you know, how can you, okay, so my neighbor had a stroke, okay, within a week of getting his second shot.
Oh, really? That's
Now,
coincidence.
I didn't say anything. Is he going to piece it together? Is anybody really going to put those kinds of things together?
I mean, it could be just he just had a stroke at the same time. I mean,
Exactly.
it's obviously possible.
Now, strokes are one of the things that we're seeing, you know, being reported to VAERS, one of the, like,
Right.
main
One
things,
of the-
blood
yeah.
clots,
Right, because the
you
clotting,
name it. But
clotting
yeah,
issue.
sure, it could be coincidence.
Right.
But how many of these things need to happen? There's no
Well,
long-term studies.
One thing
We're
that's,
doing one
that's
right now.
really interesting
We
is
are
like
the
when you
study.
see pharmaceutical commercials on TV, they're like, "Oh, take this drug for this."
I don't watch
Oh,
TV, so.
Well, I was getting ready to say, well, take this drug for this, and
Because-
then the other 25 seconds of the 30-second commercial is the side effects that it
Yes.
has.
You start bleeding from your
Shows
face.
these pictures of people frolicking through the yard, and you have these paragraphs of
Yeah.
small
He's
text
like,
at the bottom.
And one
Are
of
you
the
sure
things-
this guy has IBS? Because he doesn't.
Right. And one of the things that I love is how they infantilize everyone. It's always cartoons or something like that. You know, they're treating.
Perfect world.
I'm like, no, dude.
So much better than your world.
Well,
That's why.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
all
that-
about softening the
Yeah.
blow and.
Yeah.
Like, look how your life sucks and this life.
Yeah.
If you had this life with this medicine, you
Yeah.
could do much better.
Yeah, it's so funny. I'm like, man, they just treat everybody like children.
You know, again though, it's even whenever you ask your doctor, I'm finding out so many of these doctors, they just haven't even done any research at all. They're literally just taking the guidelines from the government, and they think that they're being smart by doing that. And they haven't actually looked at any science. They don't even know how medication works. They think it's still, a lot of them still think it's just an old school vaccine. You know, they call it an mRNA vaccine, but they think it works the same way.
The inventor of the mRNA vaccine technology, Dr. Robert Malone, he's been censored off of
He said
all
that you
social
shouldn't be
media.
doing it, right?
Well, and I mean, he is now receiving death threats, talking about having to hire security, you know, because there's billions of dollars on the line, you know.
Well, I mean,
But
yeah.
he said that the spike protein was always meant to stay at the injection site, and it's gone rogue, and it's moving throughout the body's tissues, and
They should
basically like centralizing in the heart of males and in the ovaries of females. And so, you know, if you it makes sense when you look at the incidences of myocarditis occurring, you know, especially in these
young people.
boys.
Which, I mean, again,
you know?
still, if there was a huge,
But I once again preface all this conversation with talk to your doctor. We are
or get a different one if he sucks.
well, you know, but talk to your doctor. So
I mean, just if you don't have a doctor who's real with you and just be like, hey, this is what could happen. This is why that happens. Like, they have to at least know the process of how this stuff's happening. They can't just deny it because that's wrong. But again, I do think that there's a benefit for vaccines, but there's a German scientist, you know, I think we talked about it on one of the other shows. The reason that their clotting is happening, I could be wrong. It's whichever one is the viral delivery protein or the viral delivery method that actually injects you with another virus that delivers the mRNA. I think it's Johnson & Johnson. But that's what's causing clotting, is that it's only supposed to inject the mRNA into the cytoplasm, which is the fluid of the cell, and it's actually injecting it into the nucleus of the cell, which is where your DNA is. I'm not saying that it's altering your DNA. What I'm saying is it's going in a place that it shouldn't. It's like going into your computer system and corrupting your hard drive.
yeah.
You know, and then what your body does is it's like, oh, this is a bad thing. I'm going to have to kill it.
Well,
It's a
so-
bad
Now
cell.
we're retitling the episode to Communism, Capitalism, and Vaccines.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, really.
That's sorry.
But you know, in a capitalistic system, you can have these conversations.
Yeah. And people
Exactly,
could quit
tied
watching
in.
too. They'll be like, I'm
Yeah.
going to tune this
So,
in.
but
Whenever
actually,
you don't get the government involved to push for certain vaccines, then maybe people will be more sensible about it and wait till it's approved rather than just taking it when the
Yeah,
government pushes
well,
it.
you know, it just goes back to a command economy.
Exactly.
You take the vaccine and you can participate in the economy.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, it's-
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like I
Or
was talking
flying.
like I was talking about the Overton window. I mean, it's like we were talking about, death by 1,000 cuts. We're not going to One of the things that Marxists, they hate incrementalism because they want the revolutionary. Or they want the revolution.
Well, yeah, you can't
right?
do it. You have to do it all
but
at once.
no. But see, what they have done is they have evolved to do it in incremental ways.
There were the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks back in the Soviet Union.
Right.
The Bolsheviks' revolutionary violence won out.
The reason
now it's changed.
And the reason that I'm saying that they have is because, listen, Gramsci, you got, politics downstream from culture, culture downstream from education. I mean, what they've done is they're playing a long game. They're like, well, instead of having a revolution, we're having it. It's just taking a whole lot longer. That's what I'm saying. So,
Well, they made it to where it doesn't just get extinguished at one time. They'd have to extinguish the whole movement over
You
the
can
past
really
50 years.
ingrain it in a culture
Well-
by doing the long game.
Well, it's their school system.
well, I mean, but it's still what they've done. They
that's
just
progress.
evolved.
That's progression. Yeah, they
Right.
changed from a revolutionary standpoint to a progressive.
Well, I would say, progressive or ideology. And that's one of the things that's funny that we actually use that term here for the left, progressive.
progressing.
What are you
towards something.
progressing toward? Yeah,
towards
it's
something.
communism.
Right.
I mean, nobody ever asked. Have you ever? I mean, I've only heard like maybe one other person actually say that. What are you progressing toward?
Right.
progressive
right.
to nowhere.
So think about
Utopianism.
Yeah.
think
Like
about
in the
this.
old school sense of progressive, I think I would be a progressive. That I'm in favor of technology evolving over time. I'm in favor of new business models and trying to find new systems to work toward.
Right.
But not to go back to communism, which has
you-
already been shown to not work in the history.
If you
that's regression.
if you lived in like 1902, you could be a progressive because you're like, we need civil rights.
Right. Exactly.
You can be progressive then. Now, whenever you have those rights, you
Well,
progress
I mean-
towards. But I was going to
Right.
use this example.
Go ahead.
You know, progressives are basically trying to get they want to get to the main source of resources basically, and then give everyone as much as possible, which is like plugging yourself into an outlet, right? So
Well, no, what they're doing is,
once they get to where they want, when they actually get there, they're going to electrocute themselves.
well, yeah. I mean, it's just like I told you. You want to give people enough to keep them from revolting.
Bread and circuses.
Yeah, which is pretty much what they do. They want to stay in power. I mean, think about it for an instance. Okay, so let's sit back from a 30,000 foot view, and let's talk about China now and communism. Okay, so what they have done, it's genius what they've done. They've actually combined, maybe three systems. All right, so you got the authoritarians, which are communist, actually the Communist Party. Then you actually get the capitalists to come in, which we did. I think Kissinger might have actually started that off. I could be wrong about that, but anyway. So but he went in there and implemented the two-child policy. Or whatever, because I think he knew, these people had forethought. They're like, well, if we go into this authoritarian regime and we give them money, we give them technology, and we give them, into the World Trade Organization and stuff like that. Well, I mean, it's, who was it? Warren Buffett's lawyer? I forget his name, but he said like China's the model. He says because
Well, the only reason they caught up so quickly is because they stole all the technology to get there.
well,
Because we brought it all there. They're like, hey, we're business friendly. Come on.
Exactly.
And then they kicked everyone out.
Okay, and let's think about this for a second. Everybody's all caught up in Taiwan and everything right now.
Which, as they should be.
Okay, and that's understandable. But at the same time, what are we going to do? Think about this for a second.
We'll go to war with China over
Well,
Taiwan.
Ooh, hold on.
I have no doubt.
No way, dude.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
going to tell you why.
Why?
90% of our medicines come from China.
Doesn't matter, dude. If we don't have computers, then we lose even bigger.
I understand, but I'm telling you,
You can't look.
Because
You
of
can.
the chips.
Yeah, because of the chips. So those factories, I watched a great documentary about it. Those factories take 4 or 5 years to even set up. We don't have any that can make them here.
I don't think that you look. I don't think you're looking at. I'll give
No,
you.
no, you're looking. No, your medicine. You're looking at right now. We can make factories that, if we had the
in a month.
What I'm saying is the computers. We would instantly not be able to make any new chips that are
Another
advanced.
interesting fact is
We're already
that China
seeing, like,
is the
a new car
world's
shortage
China
because
is
of
the
the
world's
chips.
largest importer of food, and the United States is the world's largest exporter of food.
Yeah, that's true.
That's another economic.
But
factor
so-
Well, let's
but-
see how
but-
that's going to change since Bill Gates has bought up nearly what?
See, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I've told you that guys about that before. About it. Well, if I wanted to choke this country out, I'd buy up all the farmland and be like, well, climate change.
That's a long.
So now it's communism, capitalism, vaccines, and war with China.
See that's a
stuff.
long term.
Right.
Yeah, that's a long term view. But
Well,
I'm just
I
saying
mean,
the chips though is
but all
that you
this-
would have no new chip. You'd have
Right.
no new technology being produced. So everything that we have right now is what we would have to have.
But it all goes back. But the reason I'm talking about this is the communist system
Right.
actually combined with capitalism, and that's fine. That's another. How long we been going now?
We're at a little over an hour.
Okay, so all right. So we've
Part
got,
2. We'll set up part 2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
fine.
cool.
We're actually we'll talk about more. So, guys, I want to plug a little bit. Just want to say thanks for actually hanging out with us today, guys. Tennessee Stands, good group. They're moving and shaking right now, guys. What's the website?
You can do TennesseeStands.com for the statewide thing.
.org.
.org.
Yeah.
Or Tri-Cities Tennessee Stands for
Right.
for this local
local-
chapter.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
get
but actually they're doing a series of Freedom Matters tours across the state. One's happening in Greenville on August 5th. So check their website for updates on that when that's happening.
okay. And Matt for Congress.
Yeah, McMak.vote. Check out our YouTube channel. We're on Spotify, on YouTube, and I mean, if you just want to get the URL, it's McMakPodcast.com, MCMAK podcast.com.
Yeah.
And that's going to direct you directly to our videos. Yeah, you were gonna say
Yeah, I
something?
also want to talk about the Soldiers of Gideon ministry. Some good people out in Unicoi actually trying to help over in that area and into Carter County. And if you want to actually support them, it's the email is thetruelight333@gmail.com or Facebook thetruelight333. So people get involved. I'm actually have some semblance of hope. Tennessee Stands got together, started pushing back, got the
ball's
eyes-
rolling for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Got the eyes of the bourgeois around here. So it's good. Get involved. Get out of your comfort zone. Let us know that you're out there. Subscribe. Hit us up. Isaac, once again, thank you for coming on, and we will have you on again
Sure thing.
multiple
It's been fun.
times. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And Miss Shannon, we thank you. And
Absolutely.
everybody, have a good evening. We'll see you. Peace.
Night.